Okay, so topic is the wage subsidies. It should be IES on the end because there are quite a few of them around at the moment, depending on what state you're in. And then there is this 50% federal one as well. So I'm going to talk you through what it is, and you should be able to figure out by the end of today whether you're going to be eligible for this or not. There are some limitations and restrictions, so I'll make sure that we cover those. So the thing is, at the moment, that even now that some of these sort of temporary, short-term, state-based, especially for those of you in Victoria and in New South Wales, some of your state-based supports are stopping, I know, but this one actually goes for 12 months. And there's some pretty amazing support out there, but most businesses just don't realise that they're eligible to claim it. So we're going to talk about the 50% wage subsidy opportunity specifically, because that's a really interesting one. We'll cover the conditions and the exclusions are growing by the day, and I'll fill you in on that. There's been some more announcements this week. There's some linked funding that once you do this, then it unlocks other funding for you. And there are some state-based subsidies in some states that also are separate from these, but you can double dip, if that's the right word. You're not allowed to claim, like, for example, you weren't allowed to claim this with JobKeeper. You can't claim two Commonwealth but government subsidies together, but you can have a state one and a federal one. So I will explain how that works. So why are we doing it? First question, that's what people usually want to know. Who are you and why are you doing it? I'm not going to tell you my life story. That's not very interesting to you. But we are doing it because it's our area of expertise. The wage subsidy is linked to training, but it's not just for apprentices, which is one of the really common misconceptions that people have. And some of my background is in training and education. So to me, I think this is really quite an exciting opportunity. You can train your people potentially for free, and you can get paid a wage subsidy for doing it. So it's our area of expertise. We're claiming it ourselves. Actually, almost all of my employees are on some sort of a wage subsidy now. And as we started doing it for ourselves, and I started realizing nobody else understood it, I was like, we really need to tell people this. We're a consulting firm normally. After the session, I can't spell, sorry, you might get us to help you, and I'll show you how we can do that risk-free, because obviously nobody wants to fork out money for something unless they know they're going to get money back. So if we've set up something where if you want us to help you, you only pay us, sort of no win, no fee, or whatever the lawyers call it. Or you could choose to do it yourself. I will make sure that I show you enough today that if you want to go ahead and do it yourself, you can. You might, it's up to you whether it's something that you want to do at the end or not. And the other one, and I guess this is where I really got a bee in my bonnet, and I'll show you the numbers in a moment, is that as is usual with all of this stuff, and anyone who's been watching the news, the JobKeeper stuff on the news lately, the big companies are getting so much of this money, and it's just not fair, basically, for those of us that are in smaller businesses. I mean, good luck if big companies want to do it, but the problem is for smaller companies is that big companies have got HR teams and grant application teams and all these people that can do this, and sort of little guys don't necessarily know how to go about jumping on this, and government is changing the rules all the time. They're changing them again today. We're waiting to hear what the new change is. So let me just give you a little bit of background as to how this came about so you'll understand the context of it. So you will remember back in the olden days, 2020, at the end of 2020, JobKeeper was coming to an end. And there were some flaws in it, as we know, as we keep seeing on the news. I mean, it was a great scheme, and it kept a lot of businesses afloat. But there were also, because it was put together so quickly, obviously, there were a lot of flaws. One of the flaws was that obviously in lots of cases, employees were paid for not working. And like those of you that are in hospitality and retail and things like that, where you had lots of people who were doing 1 or 2 shifts a week. I remember talking to companies at that time at the beginning where you basically had to stump up there for $1,500 a fortnight for everybody and then hope the government paid you back at the end. So the whole paid for not working thing was probably not doing anything for the economy other than keeping money circulating, but it didn't grow any skills for the workforce. It didn't add any value. And we're seeing that now with skills shortage in a lot of areas, that we probably missed an opportunity there to actually skill up a bunch of people while they're sitting around not doing very much. So this new program, the powers that be kind of looked at it and tried to patch the holes in it, what they'd done last time. So just the timeline. October last year, 5th of October, the government announced they were going to do a wage subsidy for 100,000 training places. Now, the training places, not tradie places. So you'll see in a moment that the terminology is all about apprenticeships and things like that. But that's because the scheme under which this is administered is called the apprenticeship system, but it covers a broad range of training opportunities and things, not just traditional trades. So they went, right, we're going to do 100,000 places, $2.8 billion. And it was offered to any employee. This, looking in hindsight, it's kind of one of those pink bat scenarios again, isn't it? So it didn't matter whether they'd worked for you for 20 years, whether they had a PhD, you could put them on a course and you get a 50% wage subsidy up to $28,000 a year. So, of course, as always happens, the big companies pretty much gobbled it all up in the first few weeks. So by the end of October, the big companies have taken up over 70,000 places. They just put their entire workforces on it. And anyone who's as old as me and remembers like traineeships and stuff 20 years ago, that's what happened last time as well. So very quickly, 3 weeks later, they went, oh, we can't just let you put everybody on it. Let's tighten up the criteria for existing workers. So then they put in some quite strict rules that said, you can put all your new workers on and you can only put some of your existing workers on for some courses in some criteria. And I will explain to you in a moment the definition of a new worker, because it's probably broader than you think, and then the courses that are still available for existing workers. And that list is getting shorter and shorter by the week. So carried on, 130,000 had been used up by May this year, and that's when the federal budget came out. And because it was working, I mean, that's, the 70,000 probably didn't create new jobs, but some of that, the balance of it did. Government then uncapped it in the federal budget. What's interesting, they uncapped it, but they said they made 170,000 more places. So we are over that 170,000 places now. So it'll be interesting to see at some point, do they stop it early? Because what they've extended is the deadline now for someone to start. We've got until the end of March. So that means if someone started, say, on the 29th of March, you would get a 12-month wage subsidy from that date. However, I would really recommend, for two reasons, that you don't leave it to the end of March. One is because the government agencies are processing them. Again, these are getting weeks and weeks behind at the moment. So I don't know what's going to happen on the end of March, whether they just cut it off, and if you're not processed by then, you're out. And also because they keep tightening up the rules, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. So is this making sense so far? If anyone needs some clarity, just chip in and ask, because I don't want to go too far in before missing stuff. So they have just, this week, they're tightening up existing worker criteria again. Let me just show you I'll show you the name of the program, the 50% and the rules for it, and then we'll look at who you can put on, what courses they could do, that sort of thing. So it's called Boosting Apprenticeship Commencements. And I was watching the news the other day, and they had an economist on, and they were talking about boosting apprenticeship commencements and how it pays money for first-year apprentices. And I'm like, they're still missing the fact that it's not just for tradies. You can do a diploma of leadership and management under this scheme. Like, it is not just for plumbers. If you're a plumber, that's great. So the criteria is, if you're a business, charity, club, like organisation, not-for-profit, or council, you can get up to 50% of the wages back for anybody that you've enrolled in an approved course. And that's capped at 7,000 per quarter, so 28,000 a year effectively. It's for the significant majority of your new workers. And as I said, I'll explain to you that criteria if you're new. And it also applies to some of your existing workers, depending on what industries you're in. The key condition is that they've got to enroll in an eligible course, and in some states those eligible courses are free. So potentially you could put somebody on a free course, upskill them, get something that's really useful to your business, and get some money. It's like pretty much win-win-win. You can also claim it in combination with the state subsidies. So, for anyone in New South Wales who's been getting JobSaver, which I know is coming to an end or has come to an end, you can have that with the JobSaver, so you potentially could get 90%. There's also, I know Queensland and Victoria have got some additional funding. So one of the young people that works for me is costing about $5,000 a year. Everything else is being paid for by the state and federal government. So it's a great opportunity to bring in a young person and develop some skills in them without being terribly out of pocket for doing so. This is just a little bit of paper to show you that it's real. Media seems to think it's only trades because it's all about apprenticeships. But if you look down and the bottom part of it, it says it's a government wage subsidy to encourage employers of any size or industry Australia-wide to take on new apprentices and trainees. And the trainees thing is the key. And by taking them on new, it doesn't necessarily mean new to your workforce. It means new to this program, which I shall explain. So yeah, it's a win-win. It's a win for the government. I think one of the things that hopefully we've learned some lessons from other countries is that our government realised going into this that we needed to boost employment. One of the key things to the country and the economy coming out of this, is that we need to upskill our employees and we need to boost employment. We need to make sure that our business is sustainable and that we can come back from these crazy times. So definitely beneficial for the government and the economy, beneficial for employers because at the moment with the skills shortage, if you can actually develop the skills in people and get paid for it, great. And it's also really important for employees if they can, work for you, even if it's just for a year, and they come out of it with a piece of paper and some skills, that's going to make their future career much easier and better. So eligibility, as I said, any employer except down the bottom, state governments, federal governments are not eligible, but councils are. So anybody else is. And I know we've got someone, I think Elisa was talking to you during the week, who you're a what's that called? I've forgotten the word, significant global entity. You guys are actually eligible for this, interestingly enough. SGE, thank you, Elisa, yeah. Doesn't matter what your ownership is. The company can be owned overseas. It can be significant global entity. All of those things that are normally not eligible for funding and weren't eligible for JobKeeper are eligible for this, because what funding is doing is, hi Andy, is actually allowing you to train local people. So the government's happy to throw money at developing skills in local people. Any industry. It's not industry specific, any business size, except for if you're a sole trader and you have no employees, you're not eligible for this yourself, because the idea behind it is that the person is doing on-the-job training. Private school, yes, Robert, because you are, because you fall into the same category as charities, clubs. Are you a not-for-profit private school or are you a for-profit private school? Either way, you would be eligible. I can absolutely double check and confirm that for you, but my understanding is that you would be eligible. So yeah, sole traders not, because you've got to have somebody to do on the job. Not for profit, yes, you would be eligible, definitely. Sole traders, there's nobody to train you, so you can't do it if you're all by yourself. But if you're a couple and one of you's the director and shareholder and thing in the business and the other one's an employee, then the employee potentially could be eligible. Full-time staff and your part-time staff are eligible. You're welcome, but not your casuals. But I'm going to talk to you in a moment about how you can use this to basically reduce the cost of your casuals and give them some skills at the same time. Citizenship rules. Australian citizens are eligible. New Zealand citizens who've been here for 6 months, you might be able to tell by the sophisticated way that I pronounce my vowel that I'm not originally from here. Pretty much, I think if you've got any Kiwis working for you, we've all been here for more than 6 months because we're all stuck at the moment anyway. And then anybody who's got a residency visa with a P in front of it. So it could be a spouse visa, it could be a skilled worker visa, as long as it's one of the ones that is allowed to stay permanently. So any temporary visas are not eligible. And there are also, interestingly, there are almost no previous qualification restrictions on this. So if you've got someone who's got a PhD in engineering, but you want to put them on a project management course, that's fine. The only thing you can't do is they can't do a course that they've already done. So, if they're already a plumber, you can't train them in the same course again, which is obviously sensible. So just a couple of little dollar things that I wanted to show you. It's not just about the dollars. This is about being able to get skilled people, and you'll get money now, but building the skills in your people and reinvesting that money potentially into the skills in your people is the opportunity to set up your business for the long term as well. So, say you put 5 people through this course, through this program. In some cases, you may have to pay for course fees. In other cases, the courses will be free. So worst case scenario, you had to pay like full fees for all the courses, like $5,000 or $7,000 for each course, which we will make sure that we refer you to training providers who will be fair with you and, you know, not make you pay up front until you've been approved and all that sort of thing. You're going to end up with over $100,000 back in your pocket just for putting the 5 people through. Plus, because they're trainees, you potentially get payroll tax rebates, work cover discounts, and there are a bunch of other state incentives as well. There are the little ones, like the typical trainees, like if you've got someone and you're training them and they're not qualified, then most states give you another $4,000 for doing that, which usually pretty much covers your course fees, if nothing else. And then I've got an example here. So Victoria at the moment has a scheme that if you hire a woman over 45, because apparently we're unemployable, who knew, that you get an extra $20,000 from the state government. We can apply for it. So if you say you hire a 45-year-old woman in an office job, $56,000 salary, I'm saying this is just for the sake of the maths, you get $28,000 back from the federal government, you get $20,000 back from the state government over the year. So it's that employee for the year is only costing you $8,000 plus, you know, super and holidays and whatever. Still substantially less than what you pay. So think about what you could do if you could take on a couple of extra people and they don't cost you terribly much at all. Let me show you a couple of interesting statistics, and yeah, again, feel free to throw questions in or comments. Some interesting statistics, actually, or maybe it's just me because my original degree was in chemistry and maths and I'm a bit of a geek, but 60% of people so far that have claimed it have not been in traditional trades, which just reinforces what we're saying about it's not just for plumbers. It is for plumbers, but not just for plumbers. 40% are in small business. So since they tightened up that rule about existing workers, that has helped a lot. 20% have been for employees over 35. So, you know, it's not just for kids. If you've got a mature age worker and you'd like to upskill them, or you're hiring somebody, you can still put them on a program. They don't have to be a teenager. Construction have taken up most of it, which is likely because a lot of them are big companies and they're already set up for apprenticeships. So they understood it straight away and they jumped in and they got it. Very interesting numbers I looked at this week on SEEK. There were, when I looked at it on Monday, there were 244,665 jobs being advertised on SEEK at the moment. That's 64,000 more than there were a month ago. Obviously, that's a reflection of opening up in Victoria and New South Wales as much as anything. SEEK put out a press release this week that you may have seen that said 100,000 plus of those jobs are in hospitality. 40% of the jobs being currently advertised in Australia are in hospitality. So for those of you that are here today, they're in hospitality, we're going to have to do something a little bit drastic to be able to hire skilled people right now. And this is an opportunity possibly to do that, to use some government money. Does the 45-year-old have to be in the office only, Karen? No, the 45-year-old, as long as it's she is female, can be anywhere. I mean, you still get, I think it's, Rachel can comment in the chat and remind me if you're there, Rachel, but I think you get $20,000 for a woman, $10,000 for a man, $10,000 for these 25, but there's a whole lot of different criteria, and it's for hiring to do any job. Each state has got different details in the criteria. So for Victoria, it's got to be a new additional employee. So if you had 5 employees last month and when you hire this person, you'll have 6, then you are eligible to apply for this funding. If you are reducing your staff numbers, you're not eligible. So it's based around expecting you to increase your numbers. Does this apply to South Australia? Not that one, Simone, but each state has got different ones. So Queensland, for example, has one that if you're in anywhere in Queensland except for Brisbane City, Sunshine Coast and Gold Coast, so you can be in Moreton or you can be North or whatever, you get $20,000 if you hire someone who's under 25 who has not been working for the last 4 weeks. So yes, Steve just asked, do they need to be unemployed? Different in different states, but most of them require them to have been not working for the last 4 weeks, but not registered unemployed. So they don't have to be with a job network provider and all that sort of thing. They could just be, you know, a stay-at-home mum who's ready to come back to work, or someone who got stood down 2 months ago and is now looking for a new job. So they all have slightly different rules, but generally in most places, if they've been out of work for a few weeks, registered or not, then you're probably going to get something for them. And the 28,000, the 50% wage subsidy, there's no requirement for those ones to be unemployed. Let me make that one clear. If they are the 28,000, you could hire them from a company. They can finish there on Friday, start with you on Monday, and you'll still get the funding. It's only to get the extra state government money that you might need them to have been unemployed for a short time. Wasn't very clear, was it? Sorry about that. Hopefully I'll explain that a bit better. So yes, so Danny's asked, does that 45-year-old need to be registered with a certain employment agency or similar? No. This is different from the federal government's like job active thing where you might get 10,000 if you hire someone who's been unemployed for a year. And in those situations, obviously, that's often quite challenging. There's, someone's been registered unemployed for a year, then they are probably not necessarily going to be easy to fit into your workforce. The over 45 one just has to have been not working for 4 weeks for whatever reason. The 50% wage subsidy can have gone from employment to employment, and the Queensland one, I think if they are under 25, I think it's 4 weeks as well. And if they're over 45, it might be 8 weeks. There's a lot of detail, as you can imagine. And I've got some very smart people behind me who actually work all this out. Hopefully that answered you, Danny. If it doesn't, ask me, clarify, and I will clarify the answer. So let's just talk about some of these new worker opportunities though, because thank you. So Karen says, my husband works and gets a wage, but he's also a director. Is he eligible for funding? No, if you're actually a director of the company, you're not eligible. If you're a majority or major shareholder, you're not eligible. So if you work for Commonwealth Bank and you've got some shares, that's fine. But if it's actually, a private company, no. Unfortunately, it's not aimed at the people that are running the business. It's aimed at the people that you're hiring and training. What you can do, though, and what quite a few people have been doing, is put your employees on it and then use the surplus funding if your husband actually wants to do a course or something like that, or go on a cruise or whatever you want to do with it. Okay, let's talk about some of the new worker opportunities, though, because there's some really cool stuff that you can do at the moment. The definition of a new worker for this. So the way to think about it is that there's two categories of workers for the 50% wage subsidy. There are what they call new workers and existing workers. For new workers, there are 1,000,001 different courses that you can put them on. For existing workers, the list is quite short and they have to be in quite specific jobs, which I will show you after we've done the new worker thing. Production workers in the manufacturing industry over 45 years old, eligible for both the state and federal rebates. What state are you in, Mary? Do you just want to remind me? But possibly, yes, if they are new. Victoria, yes. There are a couple of other restrictions on the Victorian one, like the fact that you've got to be increasing your staff numbers. It can't be a static or decrease, but yeah, production will be fine. So the new workers, because there are so many more opportunities in that, anybody who you have hired since August this year counts as a new worker. So have a little think about, have you already put somebody on? You have 90 days from the day you hire them to start the process of making this claim. You don't have to finish it, but you have to basically put your hand up and notify government that you want this money, and then they'll get around to processing it when they get around to it. So what are we now, the 3rd or 4th, or what is it, something, I don't know, 4th of November? So anybody that you've hired since probably the 6th of August, that would have to be today, so that would be a mad scramble, but if you have, let us know today and we'll help you, will be eligible for this funding and for quite a broad range of courses. So if you've hired somebody, it's kind of a no-brainer, you might as well get the money for them. If you're going to hire somebody between now and the end of March, you might as well get the money for them as well, and the course for them. Shouldn't just talk about the money. If you have, so the 12th of July, Simone, is your person that you hired on the 12th of July, are they full-time or part-time? Because it's everybody that you've hired part-time. Perfect, yes, eligible. That was the bit that I forgot to say in there. If you've hired a full-timer since August, they're eligible. If you've hired a part-timer since November last year, they are eligible. So any part-timers that you've hired in the last 12 months, let's retrospectively claim for them. They won't back pay you the wage subsidy. They'll start the wage subsidy from the day that you claim, but you may as well get it. So basically anybody that you have already hired who's been with you for less than 90 days full-time or less than 12 months part-time. And the definition of part-time is 15 hours or more a week. So 60 hours a month, average 15 hours a week. Good question from Justin about casuals. I'll cover that, Justin, right now, because that's quite important. If you've got a casual, they're not eligible, but you can change them to part-time, doesn't matter, they could have been with you for 20 years. If you change them to part-time, then they become eligible because they become a new part-timer effectively. And, you know, if you think about the numbers, and I'm not an industrial relations person, disclaimer, if you're paying a casual, say your casual rate is, I don't know, say your wage rate is $25 an hour, and you're paying them $30 an hour because they're casual and it's covering their holiday pay and sick pay and stuff. If you move them to part-time, even if you decided to keep them on $30 an hour, because, you know, people get funny when their hourly rate drops, they don't necessarily understand that they're getting holiday pay and stuff, you're going to get $14 of that back from the government. So effectively, it's going to cost you $16 an hour. The $28.34 an hour is the cap on what the governments will pay 50% of. If you pay above that, they'll just pay you the $14 an hour. I am making this complicated, I know, sorry, I'll try not to. So if you've got casuals, no matter how long they've been there, and you turn them into part-timers or full-timers, then you're eligible to claim it. So effectively, you could almost halve the cost of your casuals by making them part-time. You would need to get some, and we can refer you to the level, but you need to look at your industrial relations stuff. You can put someone on a 12-month contract for this wage subsidy, but my understanding is that you can't make someone redundant and then turn them back to casual. So you need to make sure that you structured it right so that you don't end up with a problem at the end of the 12 months, but it's definitely doable. The other one is that if you've got part-time, say you've got someone working 19 hours a week for you, they could have been there for 20 years. If you put them onto 38 hours a week, made them full-time, you'll get the second 19 hours is basically free because that's paid for by the wage subsidy for a year. So there's a real opportunity here in not just, you know, getting a wage subsidy thing, but actually being able to go, what would I be able to do in my business if I was able to get twice the amount of work for the same wage bill, and choose courses that were going to upskill my people into things that I need them to be able to do for me, like marketing, social media management, project management, IT, whatever the thing is that you go, our business could really benefit from having these skills. You know, here's an opportunity to actually get your people trained up in those skills, funded by the government, and get extra hours of work without actually having to pay anymore. It's pretty cool way. It's kind of gets to the, no, this must be too good to be true thing, but no, it's not. I've been getting money into my bank account every quarter thanks to the federal government. It's actually a thing. The little asterisks on those last two, though, are that for your casuals and your part-timers, if you're upgrading them and they've been with you for more than 12 months, so like your example, Justin, just then, you will still get the wage subsidy, but you won't be eligible for a free course for them because the state governments don't consider them to be new as far as free courses go. So you might have to pay for that course out of your own pocket, but obviously you're going to get it back and more in the subsidy. Is that making sense so far? I am kind of bombarding you with details, sorry. Just want to show you a couple of examples of courses that you might choose for your new employees. And there's each state government has a list. So basically, the way that the process works is that most of the states have funding for at least some of these courses. WA is a bit more limited than the rest because I don't think we've got anyone here in WA. They're a bit special anyway. So what you need to do is there's 3 or 4 lists that you look at. You first of all go, which courses are approved by the federal government for the wage subsidy? Which ones are for new workers, which ones are for existing workers. Then you look at the state level and you basically, it has to be a course that the state government has approved as a traineeship. So for example, I just looked at Victoria just quickly before I came on. Victoria, you can do a certificate 2 in hospitality as a traineeship. It's allowed, it's on their approved list. Then you look at the state government funding list and you go, which courses will they pay for? Because some of them they'll go, well, you can do it as a traineeship, but you've got to pay for it yourself. Other ones the government will pay for. Yes, you are special in WA, Jane, sorry. The Republic of WA, it's a bit like us here in Queensland, really. But more. So WA, the only diploma that you've got over there is the leadership and management, but you do have a bunch of certificate 4 courses that you can still do. So you match up those 3 lists and you then match it with the job that the person is doing and you work out who's eligible for what. There are supervision requirements and those are getting more and more, what would you call it? They've always been there, but people have been taking advantage of that. So say you decide, I want to, you know, I'm a I'm a pub and I want to train someone as a plumber. It's like, well, you can't, unless you've got actually a plumber on staff who can supervise this person. You can't just go around sticking people on random courses, which is, logical. The supervisor doesn't have to have the exact qualification, but they need to have those skills. And in most cases, the training provider will work with you if there's any gaps in those skills, and they'll help you fill the gaps. But some of the ones that we're putting quite a lot of people on are Certificate 3 in business for an office person. I mean, hospitality, obviously, massive opportunity. Retail is a massive opportunity at sort of entry level. The Certificate for an entrepreneurship in new business is a pretty good one, because pretty much if you're a business owner, then you're going to be deemed to be qualified to supervise that, obviously. And there's some interesting subjects in there. That's where they can do things like social media, marketing, business operations planning, whatever. There's all sorts of content in there. You can choose electives to do. And then there's a bunch of diplomas. So if you're bringing in new supervisors and you want to train them in leadership and management or something, then you could potentially do that. So yeah, that's just a little sample of them, but there are lots. Here are a few ideas that we came up with for new workers in terms of how you might use this. Some of these we've done ourselves. So I think I mentioned this one already, if you have part-timers, you could make them full-time for 12 months and the wage cost could basically stay the same. So you're not obliged to make them full-time forever, but you could offer them a 12-month full-time contract and use that extra time to do stuff. It's a chance, like certainly in our business, it's been a chance to trial new projects, new products, and work out things that, okay, normally I wouldn't want to risk the money on the wages, but we can actually afford to give. We just launched a podcast, for example, which we wouldn't have done if we didn't have a wage subsidy. If you've got casuals, you can make them part-time and practically halve your wage bill. If you're hiring one person, this is an interesting one, and a few people I know have been doing that. If you're hiring one person, you could hire a second person on a 12-month contract, and the total cost of those two people would be the same as if you just hired one person, and you get some extra projects done. So you do have a little bit of time. You've got from now till the end of March. So as long as you get, it doesn't have to be someone you've already hired. You could go away and go, oh, perhaps now's a chance to do some planning. This might impact your business plan for the next 12 months. Use it wisely. You can also rehire any staff that you've stood down. So as long as they've been away from you for 6 months or more, even if they've worked for you before, you can bring them back in and they're counted as a new worker. And the state governments are being reasonably kind, especially in New South Wales, where, how we said it's if you've hired someone in the last 90 days, they're counted as a new worker. If you hired them 5 months ago and then you stood them down for 2.5 months, they can be still counted as a new worker. It's by application, it's at their discretion. But basically you can say, look, we're a gym, we were closed, the person's only worked a total of less than 90 days. It's just, they couldn't work the rest of it, and you probably will still get those ones through. Okay, existing employees, I'll just tell you about that. It's not very exciting these days because it's been tightened up, but there's still some opportunities there. So the details, basically, these are the rules. You can get the funding for an existing worker if you put them through a trade, which is not necessarily silly. If you're a construction business and you've got some labourers and you're thinking about putting them on an apprenticeship, you may as well get the first year paid half price. And actually they've just brought in an extra layer of that where you get 50% subsidy for the first year, 10% for their second year, and 5% for their third year. So you get a decent amount of money for this. Right now, if you're thinking of putting on a traditional apprenticeship, now's probably the time to do it. If you have got your casuals and you made them part-time or full-time, then they're eligible here, and part-time to full-time, they're eligible. Now, what they refer to as a trades-based Australian apprenticeship, though, is interesting because there's actually a 13-page list of those courses, getting shorter by the day, but there's still, I think there's 11 pages now, actually, as of this week. And they basically say, if you look at this fine print, it's got to be a certificate 3 or 4 level qualification, and it's got to be in the approved occupations list. So I'll show you a couple of examples of things that fall into that category, but probably the best thing to do is if you decide to get us to help you, we can go through the whole list and map it against your workforce and go, oh, look, you've got a dog groomer, that one's on the list, whatever. So here are a few examples that we just came up with. Trades-based plenty of courses. Basically, if you're any kind of trade business, then you're eligible. Excuse my horrible formatting, I don't know what happened there. IT, there's a cybersecurity qualification. So if you're doing anything IT related, then that might be a useful one. And so that could be someone who's worked for you full-time for 20 years, and you might put them on that. It's the case for all of these. There's a few technician ones, like there's a home sustainability assessment course and things like that. So it depends again what business you're in. There's like landscaping stuff, there's, you know, various things like that. At the moment, if you've got an office manager, in very limited cases, you can put them on a couple of courses. So New South Wales and WA is putting some through on the Certificate 4 in Environmental Sustainability, which is basically a combination of business and environmental sustainability courses. It's a very narrow little niche, but if office managers are eligible for that one, but that course is about to get closed out. So we would have to double check whether we could still get anyone in on that one for you. And then there's an announcement today. There's a certificate for work health and safety, which every man and his dog has been putting people on because you can put your existing workers on it. And there's going to be an announcement about that today. And I will eat my hat if it still is on the list tomorrow, but you never know. And then, for example, there's different specific niche things. So if you're a civil supervisor in civil construction, you can do a certificate for. So those are courses for your full-time, permanent, been there for 20 years kind of people. Yeah, and there's dog grooming and animal care, and I don't know, there's some other funny ones on there. Shouldn't say that. But, you know, there's actually a serious skills shortage in dog grooming since everybody got pandemic puppies. I tried to get my dog into the grooming the other day. I had to book 3 months in advance to get in. So there you go, if you want a business idea. That's just a little example of the sort of document that comes back. That's a New South Wales one, once it's been approved. So that's sort of signed off and approved and says, yes, you can actually go ahead. This was a certificate for in civil construction for an existing worker, just to show you that there are still some getting through for existing workers. Okay, so let me tell you what you need to do, the steps, and then you can decide whether you want to do it or whether you want us to do it. So these are the steps. First step is to look at the courses that suit your business and your location. So, you know, look at those 3 criteria for funding, state approval, federal approval, and match it to your business and whether it's actually appropriate to do that course in your industry. Think about your new staff, ones that you've already hired, ones that you're going to hire, and think about skills gaps. If you can't find someone with some skills, you know, here's a chance to grow them yourself. Think about which existing staff you'd like to offer an opportunity of upskilling to, and whether there's anything on the list in your industry that they're allowed to do. Match your qualifications and staff against criteria. Check for supervision, so make sure that you have got somebody. It can be a contractor, but there's got to be somebody that's actually got some skills in this area who, when you're, because a lot of this training in this is meant to be workplace based, so it's not they don't go off to college. They do, okay, I am doing a certificate 4 in business. One of my units is I need to look at our customer complaints handling process or something. So they'll look at your existing business. So you need somebody in your business to make sure that they're not going astray and doing things that you don't want them to do, basically. Then check what other incentives are available, so employee incentives and state-based incentives, which may or may not be training related. So those ones that we were talking about before in Victoria and Queensland, you don't have to necessarily put them on a course to get those. So you could just go, forget about the course, we'll just take the 20,000 in Victoria for hiring, you know, 45-year-old women. So map those against each of your workers and see which ones you can get. Choose a training provider, and there are some that have got funding, some that don't. Some states fund some courses and those that don't. We can help you basically on the training organisation side. I've run a couple over the years. There is a range. There are those that do quick and dirty chicken flip kind of training, not allowed, but they do it, right through to those that go, we're actually going to develop your people and develop some skills. So you tell us what kind of training provider that you would prefer, and we will find you someone who suits your needs. Obviously, I have a bias to thinking if you're going to do this, you should train them. You might as well get something out of it training-wise. But if they exist, then we will tell you what they're like and help you choose one. Then you choose what they call an ASIN, Australian Apprenticeship Support Network Service, and they've got delegated authority from the government to basically approve these. Having said that, in some of the high-risk ones, like workplace health and safety, they are not allowed to approve them. They actually have to refer it back to their state training authority to approve them. So generally, they'll be able to approve them. Sometimes they can't. One of the challenges with the ASINs at the moment is because you can imagine how how much work they've got right now. And so what we're seeing is that they're hiring. One of them I talked to recently hired 100 new staff who were starting on that Monday. So a lot of them, bless them, don't really know what they're doing. The bosses do, but the kids on the ground don't. So we've had quite a few cases already where the ASIN's gone, nope, you're not eligible, and rejected it. And we've appealed it and been successful because they don't always know, unfortunately. They don't know the fine print of the rules. Organise a sign up, and then lodge your wage claim, and then lodge your claims for the other incentives. So we can help with most of that above, or if you want us to, or you can take that. We'll send you this presentation after this, and you can take that checklist and work through it yourself. Now, the easy bit, once you've actually done all that, is actually getting the wage subsidy. Once you're registered, you'll just get sent a reminder from the ASIN. It'll be a link to the government site, portal, and for me, they text me and email me. I think they do for most people, as long as they've got your mobile. And it'll be a link, and you just fill in a form saying, yes, this person still works for me. Yes, they're doing some on-the-job training. Yes, they've had, all the agreement to all the things they're meant to be doing. And then you just upload their pay slips and you get money in your bank account. Now, their policy says that they do it every quarter, and it's retrospective. So you have to pay the wages first and then you get it back. So it doesn't help your cash flow, but it certainly helps your profit, like JobKeeper. They say you get the money in the bank account within the next 14 days. In my experience, the money turns up promptly. Where they're really slow at the moment is in sending you the actual form, the link for you to upload your pay slips. So I just got mine last week for the quarter that ended on the 1st of October. So that's like 3 weeks late. So please don't count on this money in terms of, I'm going to need this to pay my bills. They can be late. We've chased them. We've got some good contacts and we're good at chasing them up. You will get the money, but they are kind of swamped at the moment. Okay, questions. If you've got questions, please. Here's a couple of questions that we get all the time, but please feel free to drop in more questions because we are just about to finish up. One of the questions that we do get a lot is, what if my employees failed a course? Basically, one guy said, my employees are kind of thick, which was nice. You will still get your wage subsidy. You've got to ensure that they engage in the training, so they've got to try, but you will still get a wage subsidy. And if they leave halfway through the year, you don't pay back. You just won't get it from the day that they leave, obviously. Question today, the Victoria, someone stood down, no jab, no job. Will they be eligible for Jobs Fund Victoria? That's a really interesting one, Rachel. There is no criteria on the Jobs Victoria Fund that says the person has to be vaccinated to get the fund. So if their employer couldn't hire them back, obviously, because they've got to hire new people. But if they got a job somewhere else, then yes, they'd be eligible for two things. The person could approach their new employer and say, hey, I might have to work from home, but I come with a $28,000 subsidy if I do a course, and potentially a $20,000 subsidy because of my age. So yes, they would be eligible. Good question. Okay, the other question that we get a lot is this really time consuming for the supervisors? It should not be, because the training organisation delivers the training. You guys are meant to make sure that the person's actually implementing it in their job, which they should be doing anyway. And you need to sign off, each unit of the course. Are they competent? Can they do it? And all that sort of thing. Mary says, will you provide links to apply for the back and estate subsidy? We can, Mary, there's kind of a million of them, but if you work with us, yes, absolutely, we will send you all the links. If you're not working with us, I can point you in the general direction and show you some of them, but there's probably about, I don't know, Rachel will be able to say, about 30 different websites, Rachel, that you have to refer to when you're trying to map it out for somebody. But we can give you the main ones for sure. Okay, so how does this work if you get us to help? Here is something to think about. This bureaucracy is not your core business, I assume, because you're probably sane. You are probably busy either because business is booming or business is busting. There's pretty much nothing in between in these times, is there really, for people? And you are very welcome to do this yourself. And yes, we'll happily send you as many links as we can. I'm just a little worried that you might not be able to follow them, but that's probably me making an assumption. I keep running into people whose applications have been rejected because they get coded wrong, because they have to be the right code in the right place in the form, or they've been given bad advice about how to lodge the claim. What we were saying before about the apprenticeship centres having lots of new staff. So my suggestion would be is that you get us to do the setup, like your accountant would have done for JobKeeper probably, if you're eligible. Get us to do all the up, and then once a quarter you just need to upload the pay slips. You carry on with your core business. The way that we would work it is when the first grant money hits your account, you just forward 10% of the approved amount to us, and then you just keep the rest and keep doing what you're doing. So you don't pay us anything unless you get approved. If cash flow is an issue for you, we don't want to put people in a situation where cash flow is a problem. So you can either pay us when you get approved. That would be great. That would help our cash flow. But if you can't do that, then we'll wait until you get your first quarterly payment. We don't want to put people in. There is a lot and it's confusing. Yes, there is. We don't want to put people in a position where we make your business more difficult or your cash flow more difficult. So if you can't afford to pay us until you get paid by the government, that is absolutely fine, and we're quite fine with that. If your cash flow is fine, then it would be great if you pay us when you get approved. Entirely up to you. And then you just keep doing what you do best, and we run around and chase the bureaucrats for you. Yes. So from here, the first step is you provide us with some information and give us the go-ahead to work on this for you. And we will do a quick assessment of your eligibility. So we can send you a form through to do the info, to get the info, and then we can talk you through it over the phone if you need us to, whatever's easier for you. It's basically, who are your staff, how long have they been there, what job do they do, that sort of stuff. We'll review it, and if we think you can qualify, then we'll go ahead and action it. And obviously we'll do that in cooperation with you, because we need to talk, you need to talk to your staff about, do you want to do this course? We need to help you figure out opportunities and strategies for using it. If it's a really simple one, we'll just say, look, don't worry about getting us to do it. You can just do it. Like if we just go, look, you've got an apprentice, put them on an advanced trade and you might as well get the money, then there's no point in us doing that for you. You might as well do that one yourself. If it is a really simple one, we'll just tell you, and then if you've got the time, you can do it yourself. If it's more complicated and we know that you'll be better off to get us to do it, then we'll tell you that. So once we've done that pre-assessment, we'll be able to tell you, yes, we should go ahead, or no, we shouldn't. If you want to have a quick chat with us first, if you've got any other questions, or if you've got any other questions, drop them in and I will stick around. But we are all working from home, as you can probably see. I don't know if my cat participated in this webinar or not. So probably the best way to get hold of us is to email Elisa on that email there, alyssaw@sagestrategy.com.au. I see Rachel has just dropped the link to the quiz if you want to just fill it out quickly now, and we'll do a pre-assessment. She's dropped that into the chat if you want to grab it. And Elisa's dropped her mobile number into the chat as well, which is 0451 733 418. So I will leave this webinar running for another couple of minutes, so that if you do want to grab that quiz link from there, you can fill out the form and send it in to us today and we'll have a quick look. If you don't grab it from here, we can email you later on today and send it to you anyway. That's fine. I would love to have a little bit of feedback. We've done this a few times now. We've changed it a couple of times. I guess one of the things I'd really be interested in hearing from you, if you can, if anyone doesn't mind sticking around for just a moment to tell me, did it make sense? Is there anything you think I should have covered that I didn't cover, or was it too complicated? One of the things, funnily enough, that we've had real difficulty with our initial marketing of this, like I just thought we'd just email everybody and go, we chose industries where we thought you'd be benefiting from it. And we emailed people and we were like, hey, this is thing, do you want to get some government money and training? And the number of people that have gone, oh, no, it must be a scam. Are you a Nigerian prince trying to get $1 million off me? So if you've got any suggestions on how we can communicate this to people, that would be really helpful, because I do think it is such a good opportunity. Having said that, we are getting a lot of people now going through the process and applying, so I think it will gain momentum as we go. Otherwise, thank you so much. Grab that link, fill it out, send it to us, work out what you can get. Good luck with your hiring. If you're hiring, it's interesting times at the moment for employing. Trish, raise your hand. I'm going to see, Trish, would you like me to try to unmute you so that you can speak? That could be, let me just see if I know how to do that. I've never done the hand raising thing, Jane. I would love to organise you run a WA specific webinar for our network of members. Yes, I would be happy to do that, Jane, and I can customise that to the industry and the members, no problem. More than happy to explain it to people. Sometimes it's easier to explain it firsthand. Sorry, I completely failed technology. There's a couple of people who have raised their hands. I have no idea what to do with that. So if you would like to pop your question in the Q&A, or you can give me, actually my mobile, if anyone wants to give me a call afterwards, is, I'll just pop it in there. So if you've got a question for me, just call me on that number. Otherwise, if you've got a question about how to organise this, then Laylis is the best person to talk to about logistics. Thank you, Simone. Are you holding another webinar for your husband? I don't know if we're holding another webinar for your husband. I know what you mean, though. We are going to do another one in 2 weeks. I don't know if we've chosen the time yet. It'll probably be the same time. The other thing we could do, Simone, if you like, is we could send you out the recording of this one and you can make him sit down and watch it. Up to you. Just let us know what suits you better. Otherwise, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. And yeah, hopefully we'll talk to you soon. And all the best. Yes, I'll stick around and ask questions, but don't feel like you have to stay. Karen, how's the costing worked out? Do you mean, Karen, the costing of our fees or the course costs, or which bit? If you just want to clarify that for me, I will answer you. Our fees. Okay, so our fees are just 10% of the dollars that the government gives you, to make it, kind of simple. So if they approve, if you've got someone earning $56,000 a year and they approve you for the 50% wage subsidy, then we'll charge you 10% of 28,000, so 2,800. So it's really, if you've got someone who's part-time and they're earning less, then we'll just charge you 10% of whatever it is that you're going to get. And we're happy to work one-on-one with people if you kind of go, oh, we can't pay this now, can we pay this later, or whatever, that's all fine. We're not fussed on that. We just want to make this work. Can one of my team make sure that Simone gets an invitation and a recording for the next webinar so that she can show it to her husband? Thanks, Karen. Hopefully that answered your question. Otherwise, thank you, everybody. Give us a call and we'll answer any other questions then. Have a great Thursday. See ya.